Hello friends, this is David Sami with the Christian Journey. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the result of the election. I wanted to do a two-part series because I know for me, many of my friends are very disappointed how things turned out. And what I'm hoping to do in these two-part series is to reflect on our own direction as Christians. I think it would be fitting that every once in a while we take a step back and consider our path. Are we going in the right direction or have we gone off track? And some of the things that I want to talk about today are things as bad as they appear? Are we going in the right direction? Have we become too heavily vested in the political arena? Who is influencing us? Are we being influenced by the Bible? Or are we being more influenced by conservative outlets and media? Is conservatism one and the same as Christianity? You see, today we think conservatism and Christianity are synonymous words. That if you are a conservative, you must be a Christian. And if you are a Christian, you must be conservative. Is that accurate? You know, these are some of the things that I wanted to talk about today. And on the next time, I wanted to talk a little bit about these apostles, prophets, and these prophecies. That we have many self-proclaimed apostles and prophets that have came out and prophesied that President Trump is going to win the second term, which it didn't work out. But how much stock should we put in on the words of these so-called apostles and prophets? So that would be for the next time. But if we want to get a good view of where we are today and examine the path of our lives, it would be good for us to get a historical context and to see how we got where we are. In the 1980s, I remember that the Christian community was very passive politically, and some Christian leaders, they felt like we should be more engaged in the political arena, that the majority of the people in the country were claiming to be Christian, but we weren't having as much influence as we should as a majority. So some Christian leaders like Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, they began to slowly bring the Christian community into Republican Party. And for me, I gradually became very interested in politics because I began to see again being a Republican and a conservative as the way forward, that the country would be best served if we would have a Republican president. And I would listen to all the conservative outlets and talk show. I would listen to Rush. I would listen to many of conservative pundits. And I gradually began to view the Democrats in light of what my outlets were telling me. That I felt like, no, the country would be best served if we have a Republican and a conservative president. But when 9/11 happened, I was all for punishing the people who did this to us. I felt like we needed to show strength and go after the people who did this to us. I was all for going to war in Afghanistan and going and capturing Osama bin Laden and doing away with Al-Qaeda. And at that time, I remember that all the conservative talk shows, they were all trying to raise support for these efforts and to convince people that this is the right course for our nation. Now, what was interesting is how many prophecy teachers all of a sudden got revelation from God that the people who are going to come against the land of Israel and the people that are going to come against us are the Muslim. that they saw things now that they never noticed before, and how the Lord revealed to them the Islamic threats and the Islamic Antichrist. And it was as if we were overnight being conditioned to view the Muslim as our enemies. And it was just beginning to permeate into Christian community to the point that I vividly remember listening to a very prominent Christian pastor, and he has many satellite churches all across the country. And his sermon, he said that it was the job and destiny of US to eradicate Islam off the face of the earth. And everybody in the congregation was cheering. And I thought to myself, where is he getting this from? Is this what the New Testament teaches? And it was almost like we were all being swept up into this tidal wave of anti-Islamic feeling. But the tipping point for me was the war in Iraq. When we decided to go to war with Iraq, I personally took a step back and asked the question, why are we going to war with Iraq? What has Iraq done to us? Is this a just war? But what was saddening and puzzling, I did not hear a single pastor that I would listen to, or at least in my circle, that ever raised that question if this war was just or not. It was almost as if the Christian community is a constituency of Republican Party, and if the party decides to go to war, it was the job of the leaders to get the rank and file to follow and embrace the direction. Nobody questioned, is this war just? Is this what we should be doing? And once again, the so-called prophecy teachers, they were all coming out with anti-Islamic rhetoric and how the Lord has shown them that Ezekiel 38 and 39 is not the Russians, but it is this Islamic Confederacy who is going to come against Israel. But it was amazing how at that time the Lord was revealing all of these things to these prophecy teachers that they never saw it before. But you see, after doing some soul searching, I came to the conclusion that I was being manipulated. I was being more influenced by conservative talk shows and outlets rather than the Bible. And I know that, it was almost as if I knew what the Bible says, but my opinion and my outlook and my worldview was not being shaped by the Bible, but it was being shaped by talk radio. They were the one that were convincing me that our actions are correct. But I had to ask myself, is this what New Testament teaches? What does the New Testament teach us about us dealing with our enemies? I mean, our nation can decide to go to war. But does that mean me as a Christian that I would come to hate the Muslims? What if I have a Muslim family moving to our area? How should my behavior be toward them? What is the difference between a Christian and a secular conservative? Should we behave the same? But you see, we all gave a lip service that we love the Muslims or we love, these people, but I didn't. But that was the thing to say. But you see, the attitude of my heart was being directed and guided and influenced by these outlets and talk shows rather than the Bible. And even now today, some of us, we may feel like, okay, the country would be served better if a Republican president gets in there. Fine. You do what you can to get a Republican Party member or somebody to be president. Fine. But if our candidate did not get in, that doesn't mean all is lost. God is in control. In the midst of all of this chaos, God is in control. But we may feel like, well, if somebody from the Democratic Party gets in, now he's going to implement policies that are going to be very contrary to God and his ways, and the culture would be lost. But you see, the thing we need to remember is, once again, God is in control. There are many things happening in this world, but God is the one that raises up leader and brings leader down. But what should we do? What should we do? And you see, the first question we need to ask ourselves is this: who and what is influencing you? What, is this the Bible? Or is it, once again, the conservative media outlets? You see, even if somebody gets into the office that you may feel like it's not the right person, we should continue to grow as Christian and trust that the Lord is the one that is moving and directing things, and nothing happens apart from Him guiding and directing things. But who are you becoming? What is the attitude of your heart? Are you becoming more Christ-like, or are you becoming more like a political activist? Now, one of the questions that we need to ask ourselves is this: what do you think is the best way to influence the culture? Is it by policy, or is it by example? You see, the church, by its definition, ecclesia, means called out ones. Church are the people that the Lord has called out to Himself from among the people. So if you want to influence the culture, we fell into the trap of thinking that the best way is by policy, by getting heavily involved politically and try to sway things this way. But I think in the process, we gradually lost who we are. We don't resemble godliness, but we resemble a bunch of people who are very angry when things don't turn out the way we hope. But there is another way to influence the culture. You see, if we become the right kind of people, if we become more godly, if we begin to have good marriages, if we begin to have children that are upright and well-mannered, we could become an example to our culture that here are a group of people whose lives are not messed up, whose words are trustworthy, who behave in a way that is fitting. Maybe they have something that we need. Maybe we should look at what they have to say. But if we become just as messed up as everybody else, what do we have to offer to them that they would want? We are just like them. We're just like everybody else. So ask yourself that question: what is the best way to influence the culture? And the second question that you can ask yourself is, what is the goal of Christianity? Is it to transform societies and culture, or is it to transform individuals? You see, I believe the goal of Christianity is to become godly, to become Christ-like. And the culture sometimes would change as a result of the people who are in it. It would be the byproduct. But if we want to go and directly change the culture toward Christianity without first having these people's heart to be changed, I think our effort would only be short-lived at best. But you see, once the people's heart change toward the Lord and things of God, then it will become more lasting. That's when the real change begins to take place. But this election, once again, We need to accept the result, again, if you're on the right or left. But now, focus and see, how are you being influenced? Who is influencing you? Are you growing as a Christian? Or are you becoming once again, more politically involved and basically a political activist? So begin to ask these questions and reflect on the path that we are going. I personally think that we are being manipulated. We are going in a wrong track. And we need to re-examine and get back more toward godliness and growth in our walk with the Lord. But that doesn't mean that you don't try. If you feel that country would be served best if a Republican gets in there, go that way. If you feel like Democrat, go that way. But don't lose sight of what is important, which is godliness for a Christian. And that's what I wanted to highlight, that not allow the result of this election to make us feel like all is lost. All is not lost. But what would be lost is if we lose who we are and begin to exhibit behaviors that are not Christ-like and begin to lose our way and go further and further away from what is prescribed in the Bible. So just some thoughts, some things to consider. But on the next time, I want to talk a little bit about, again, apostles, prophets, and prophecies, and how much stock should we put on these things? And are these things true? Are they valid? So we want to take that up a little bit and go from there. Well, great talking to you, and may the Lord be with you. May He watch over you. May He make His face to shine upon you and give you peace. Just don't let your heart be troubled. Just go forward and focus on the Lord. Until next time, this is David Sami with The Christian Journey.